Ask the Mayor. Your chance to ask the Mayor of Weymouth, Bob Hedlund, questions about the town of Weymouth and or anything else that you have concerns about. Ask the Mayor is pre-recorded. And now, here's Bob Hedlund.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Ask the Mayor. It's our first episode in the springtime, Bob, and I'd like to welcome everybody once again to meet the mayor.
Doesn't
Mayor
feel like
Bob Hedlund.
Thank you, Jim. Does not feel like spring out there. There's still snow on the ground and pretty cold the last few days.
We're mid-April and we're waiting for the sunshine, but things are looking up. Let's say that. Is it trending in the right direction, Mayor?
It's trending in the right direction.
So and P.S. on that note, the opening day of Libby Field was right across the street not so long ago, and the high school baseball team won an extra innings, and you threw out the first pitch.
I didn't stick around. I threw out the first pitch. I came back to work, actually. We just Steve Riley, the Recreation Department Director, and I walked across the street. They had us throw out the first pitch. Mine was a little bit low and outside. I haven't thrown all winter, but it was a heck of a lot better throw than the Recreation Department Director's pitch. Steve. His throw was reminiscent of a first pitch Obama made either in Washington or in Chicago.
Well, those who know Steve well know he's more of a soccer player than a baseball player.
Obama must have not played any baseball in his career. He's more basketball, I guess, right?
I know we're supposed to cut down the jib-jab, but the opening day for Weymouth Youth Soccer was this past Saturday as well, another part of the Steve Riley plan, and the town is just buzzing, Bob.
Actually,
honestly.
the same day that, so opening day of baseball was a couple days earlier, but Saturday opening day of Weymouth Youth Soccer, that place was bustling until 8:30 at night that night.
Almost 12 hours straight.
And it was also the first day of Street Hockey League opening.
Oh, son of a gun.
So it was a busy time in town, and we had the herring run cleanup
we
the
saw
same
all those
day.
guys walking around.
It was nice to see people out and about and involved in the community.
It's really phenomenal. It was a great day, and the fields, the sense of pride that everybody's biting into. I know I was down to those fields. Everybody's a buzz. It's phenomenal. And on that note, last bit of jib-jab, Steve Riley is leaving Weymouth Youth Soccer. He's had dual roles, volunteering, running Weymouth Youth Soccer. It's going to be a big miss, and of course, Steve did a great job for a number of years there. So thank you, Steve.
So one bit of housekeeping, Jim.
Please.
We strive for accuracy on this show, and I think we've done a pretty good job in the 2 years that we've been doing the show.
When news breaks, we fix it.
When we make a mistake, we want to correct it. And last episode, we were talking. We got a question about recreational marijuana, and I mentioned the communities that had enacted bans and the communities that we thought had approved. And I made a mistake regarding Hull. At the time of the taping, it was right before town meeting vote, and I had said Hull had approved recreational marijuana. That was not accurate. Their zoning board and planning boards had put forth a measure that was going to set aside areas for places to be zoned for recreational retail shops. But their town meeting reversed course and voted down recreational marijuana in Hull. So I just wanted to get that information out there and correct ourselves.
Wow, it's a complex issue, a lot of groundbreaking as far as all these different elements associated with it, from retail to commercial distribution. Well, listen, before we go any further, everybody's been waiting, highly anticipated, the drawing for our Ask the Mayor mug. We had a hodgepodge, a plethora, a deluge of entrants, everybody trying to win this mug.
Want to do it at the end of the show?
Where you lead, I follow on it. I'm getting different information from the production people, but we forge ahead.
This is
we're getting into the
Jim,
questions.
in the industry, that's what's known as keeping people
the hook
on the hook here.
Yeah.
They're going to want to stay tuned for the whole show to see who wins. But let's get into the questions.
So stay tuned. Well, Bob, we're talking about a lot of fun stuff associated with the town. I have to admit, I made my debut writing in a question to ask the mayor. I actually typed in the question, and Mayor, the question revolves around.
You're like Tom Brady, like Giselle said. You caught your own pass.
Well, this one was startling to me, and I bet everybody else will find this very interesting as well. I'm driving down the road. I don't even have to read from my own question because there's somebody not so far from my neighborhood who has a bumper sticker on with the F word, and it's relating to Trump. So it says F Trump. It's the first time I ever saw a swear word like that on a bumper sticker, and I found my fourth grader was one who pointed out to me as she read me the bumper sticker, and I found it, needless to say, offensive and intolerable. So I sent in a question wondering, is there a law, and what's your understanding of people having those type of words on a bumper sticker? I've never seen that word on a bumper sticker.
I would be unfamiliar with any law that would prevent that from happening. I mean, you might be dealing with some First Amendment stuff here. I don't know.
Freedom of speech.
But clearly, it's distasteful, and
yeah.
But it's part of the trend, I think, in society, the debasing of and coarseness in our culture now.
The insertion of
You hear
street
the
slang.
word more frequently. You hear it in songs and movies more frequently. So that person probably doesn't think that they're being coarse.
You know, as I was talking to the boys earlier, if it said F chocolate chip cookies, I would find it offensive. It's the fact that that language, that word was inserted. And if we all drove around with those on the back of our vehicles, wouldn't that?
So the answer to your question is likely no.
I think it probably is a free speech issue, but son of a gun. That's my final word on it. All right, Bob, here's another question from probably our most frequent inquisitor, Ed Hartnett, who says, hello, Mayor Bob and Jim, Fly Me to the Moon Melody. I first want to say, Jim, Fly Me to the Moon Melody. I first want to say I am very interested in the Ask the Mayor mug. His name, I'm sure, has been entered. It can become a great collector's item. Since the election of our president, has he in any way made it
We're informed that his name has not been entered in. So can we put it in?
Are you ready?
Okay, all right.
Hold on.
No, they got it. They got it. They got it.
I'm one step ahead of them.
All right. You better mix it up good.
It's going to be added to the thousands, Ed. It's a 1 in a million shot. Well, Bob, Ed's question is, since the election of our president, has he in any way made it more difficult to appropriate money from the federal side? And has it affected the way Weymouth has been running since he started this term? Where do you have more success getting money for Weymouth, through the state or federal government? And does the budget that Governor Baker said, just recently said, affect how much money you receive for the town? Ooh. Thank you for your hard work regarding all the progress on Weymouth.
That is an excellent question, and I know that some of the budget submissions that Trump has put forward to Congress changes different formulas in different areas. I think it's, I just read recently, I'm not sure if it's transportation funding. It was transportation funding. It hasn't been enacted yet, and Congress obviously may change things, but it has shifted more benefit to rural as opposed to urban on the formula. So there's probably other things that Trump has done, but we have not felt the effects of it one way or the other here in Weymouth. We've been very fortunate. In answer to his question, we derive more direct benefit, I think, from state grants than we do from different federal funding formulas. And usually the federal stuff's going to pass down through the state anyway. One of the significant federal programs that Trump talked about cutting, which Congress did not, was the Community Development Block Grant funds, which pays for paving, drainage control work.
Infrastructure in general?
Yeah, some of the projects that funded recently in Weymouth was drainage and paving on Carlson Cove, Sundon Road.
Does this come directly from the federal government or feds to the state, to the local town?
It comes directly to the communities in form of block grants and can be used, but they have to be used in target areas that meet the criteria. So certain neighborhoods in Weymouth qualify and certain neighborhoods in Weymouth don't. And it allows us to, for instance, use it for paving on roads that otherwise the state wouldn't allow us to pave, i.e. private ways, which is always a hot topic. A hot topic here on Ask the Mayor. Yeah. So there are some federal programs that have remained unchanged. We won't get into them, but we've been on a roll with grants coming from the state, which have been helpful. So in answer to his question, we derive more from the state side that way than the federal government generally. And there was a third part I think Ed had there.
Oh, we've already turned the page on this end. Where do you have the most success getting money through the state or federal government, which I think you kind of addressed?
Yep.
And does the budget that Governor Baker said affect how much money you receive for the town?
Yeah, so Governor Baker's budget, it's a mixed bag in some ways. We're pretty constant on funding for roads. We're pretty constant on local aid. We're a little disappointed and we're a victim of the formula with Chapter 70 school aid, and we've made our frustrations known about that. The good news is yesterday the House did their budget, and there's a slight increase in Chapter 78 to Weymouth, so we'll see how that plays out.
And 78
when we see a final education aid, per pupil aid to Weymouth. There was a slight increase over what the governor proposed, but that still has to play out, until July, when we know firm our final numbers, or just a little bit before July.
It's such a great question. I would never think the town would get money directly from the feds, that everything would come from the state, with the exception of the FEMA stuff that you were, a month or so when he was down there.
Yeah, the
Emergency
FEMA
management.
stuff, that kind of, is impacted by what the data of the state, so that's another thing that would pass through the state, But Ed, that was a great question by Ed. I mean, we could talk the whole show about the different forms that the aid comes to Weymouth, but the significant one from the feds is the one I mentioned, and,
And most of that, most of the grant stuff that, you've been assembling over the course of the last couple of years, that's all pretty much from the state directly, right?
Yeah. And then there's private, private foundations we go after grants for, things like that.
Think about
too,
that aspect. All right. Very good question, Ed. Thank you, Bob. Mayor, this one comes in from and it's titled Hall Rental. Hi, Mayor. First, I'd like to thank you for all your hard work. The positive changes that you've implemented in such a short time are refreshing. If you could please refrain from using my name, I'd much appreciate it. We'll make sure that part comes out.
The X thing again. We can take care of that.
My question is regarding hall rental and how the revenue is being spent. The auditorium at Abigail Adams School has over 150 broken seats. How can rent from this facility come in and they not be maintained? I would hope if a town facility is being rented, some of the income would go towards maintaining it, whereas all the money been going. And I'm going to throw in there, Bob, I didn't even know a private person could rent the public, auditorium, so the school auditorium. So what the heck?
Well, you've been to functions that
all related
user
to town
groups.
business, though, not an individual private user group. Plays, town forums, things like that. What's an example of an independent organization renting out
different? Federal agency comes down for hearings on the compressor station.
Oh, they have to rent the. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what the threshold is,
Sure.
but we had a discussion at the last school committee meeting on rates. In answer to her question, I think that the rental pretty much covers the operating expenditures and not really the capital needs when you're talking broken chairs and things like that. That would be more on the capital side, which, again, as part of the overall maintenance of the school on the capital side. The fees, I think, covered janitorial and electricians that might be needed that day to hook up, equipment or whatever. So that's separate. The issues that she brings up would be addressed in the school's capital plan.
And specifically,
and I'm unaware. I off the top of my head, I can't tell you if the capital needs list the school just approved a couple weeks ago, that the school committee just approved a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure if I remember seeing seats on there, but I'm assuming that they probably are, and the department would be aware of it. But that would be on the capital side as opposed to pretty much what the fees cover.
And part of her question was,
now, unlike the fields, by the way. So on our fields, we have a separate account set up, and the revenue from the fields are so significant that some of that money is used to then make the improvements in addition to the maintenance. But that's a little bit different model than what she's talking about.
But if someone rents that auditorium, the revenue from that rental goes to the school department, I would imagine, to maintain the facility.
Janitor's got to stay there,
Yeah,
lock up, and do what he has to do, and stuff like that.
Yeah, interesting. It's interesting that she knew how many broken seats were in the venue
That's
as
good.
well. That looked
That's
like quite a
good.
task. She's on top. Well,
and I'll bring that to light. Next time we're talking capital improvement plan amongst the school committee.
moving on, or hopefully moving past the title. This one is Snow from Jason Thayer, whose name I know I can say on the air. Jason writes in, Dear Mayor, with the last three...
He's running neck and neck with Ed Hartnett.
We'll have to check the cup. Dear Mayor, with the last 3 snowstorms and another predicted this week, is the snow budget depleted? And in your opinion, or mine, Citizen Inquisitor, how did the town handle the plowing with complaints, if any? I thought the roads were plowed and handled well. I would second that, Jason. And what are your thoughts, Mayor?
The snow budget was depleted on day one because this is one area in financing town functions that under state law we are allowed to deficit spend. We spend the money, or we spend the money and we appropriate it later based on what the need is throughout the year. And I think it was either the last council meeting or the one before, we had our measure in to cover the snow expenses, the recent snow expenses. I'm not sure how many measures we do throughout the course of the winter to address that, but we pay basically after the fact. So it's almost like a credit card, if you will. And that's the only area that we're allowed to really do that.
Do you borrow from the town itself, or do you borrow from an independent organization? Like, is there a little slush fund that you're actually borrowing against?
We don't use the word slush fund in town government.
Sorry.
But
Well, it's snow. The
we
question's
won't
about
get into
snow.
it, but basically that's the one area where we fund it after the fact based on what we end up spending, because it's hard to predict what. And the state
amount of snowfall, sure.
By the way, the state always operated on the same way, and the governor in his budget submission never appropriated any money for snow and ice removal. And the time I was on Beacon Hill, and the first guy to come along that actually did that, which I think was more sound budgeting, was Mitt Romney, who was the first governor that I saw that actually, in his budget submission in January, actually put forward money to set aside for snow and ice removal. And
Well, it's such a wild card, obviously, season to season, huh?
yeah, this year, unfortunately, we spent a lot more money than we did last year.
I'm this close to asking you to ballpark it. I'm kind of. I got to.
Don't.
Okay.
I forget. And I actually
no
was just
problem.
looking at the data recently, and it was really surprising how many quote incidents that DPW responded for. There was a lot of salting and sanding this year. A lot more than last year, and that's where the bulk of the money was actually spent, I think, this year.
And geez, if you didn't budget,
Or not the bulk, but more was spent on sanding and salting than on actual plowing.
and if you didn't budget for the plowing, you certainly didn't budget for all the tree removal. Holy smokes, that's a full-time
That
job
was
around this town,
a
huh?
huge thing this year. Was that? But that was done. There's overtime, a lot of overtime for that. But
Jeez,
outside of snow and ice, that did not fall into snow and ice budgeting.
I really can't recall, just anecdotally driving around. I sent you a couple pictures, as a matter of fact, from on one of the.
We'll try to
by
get
Pond
those
Street.
numbers for the next
Holy
show,
smokes.
because I actually had, and it's in my phone. Maybe for the next show I can bring it up, but we actually had the number of tree calls we got in the last 2 rounds of storms. The number of calls to DPW, like 80% of the calls were about downed trees rather than people complaining about sidewalk or snow removal on their street or in their neighborhood.
I'm sure
I
you
want
recall.
to say it was like the number is like 120 kicking around in my brain. It could be right, could be wrong, but that's a number that's jumping out at me at the moment.
Within the month,
I hope I don't have to open the next show with another correction,
well,
like we did about
little
Hull
follow-up.
earlier. So we'll get that for the next show.
Sure.
We'll get those
I
numbers.
just less than a month ago, I sent the mayor pictures on Pond Street. 2 40-footers that fell in spaces that could barely accommodate them. I mean, literally 5 feet on either side. Houses, people would have been devastated. I've never seen anything like it over the course of the
I
last
know
few
you're a
months.
regular visitor to. Did you inspect the trees at Great Hill? I know you're a regular visitor.
It's usually seasonal. I'm in the Great Hill area because of the soccer connection, but I haven't been up there. Why? Did they take a big hit too?
I don't know.
Okay. Another one of our follow-ups for a future show.
It's your follow-up. You're up there more than me for some reason.
We have it's well, I encourage you to join me, and I encourage all the citizens to meet up there on a regular basis.
That's a little scary. I can picture the graphic now that might go up there.
Everything is beautiful. We'll have a sing-along. All right, Bob, listen, we're moving right along to another Ed Hartnett question, and this one is about fees. He's heard a lot about fees, use of the fields and the gym and the auditorium and so forth.
I'd like to
Not
meet this
purposeful.
Ed Hartnett.
Yeah.
I think he should be the guest host someday.
He is
I don't
certain-
think he entered his name into the guest host competition.
Well, we encourage Ed to stop on by.
Maybe
I'd
he
love
could
to have
join
him.
you. And Ed, write in. We'd love to have you on. Get the face behind the name here.
We get one more inquisitor, and then we'll bring a deck of cards and have a party, for heaven's sakes. I like it. By the way, keep the questions coming. If you too would like a seat at the table, like we're offering Ed, keep the questions coming to askmayorbob@gmail.com. askmayorbob@gmail.com. I use it. I think they should too, needless to say. Bob, again, getting into the Ed questions, and it's kind of, again, we don't read these questions in advance, but they are connected relative to the topics at hand so far in the show. I've heard a lot about fees, use of our fields and gym and auditorium and so forth. Who's in charge of collecting these fees, and how is the cost determined? Does the school ever have to incur fees of any type while using Weymouth facilities? For instance, if the school had, say, the drama department and they ran a show for 3 days and they charge for tickets, where does the money go? To the drama, to the school? Thank you, once again, thumbs up, Mayor, for the great job you're doing in this town. It really shows it can only get better.
Was there a name on that one?
That's all Ed.
Oh, that was Ed.
Yeah, that's all Ed Hartnett.
Fees,
That's quite a bit.
so I assume the ticket price goes to the organization that's
Yeah, I hope
running
so.
it.
It's a school organization. The drama club
Yep.
keeps it.
Yep, and the fees, we talked about this earlier in the show, ironically,
Yeah.
that go to the school, that's set by the school department. It's discussed and then approved by the school committee later. They have someone over there that coordinates the hall rental as part of their responsibilities. That was actually impacted in our recent reorganization of
I saw that.
maintenance.
Departments.
That person, I think some of their responsibilities has changed, or the person has changed. But
Okay.
it's impacted in that consolidation.
Geez,
And
I'd
they
like to-
coordinate the rentals and collection of the fees. So the fees on the hall go to cover expenses related to the operation of the hall and or auditorium, et cetera. And the ticket obviously would go to whatever organization I would think is operating that event.
And I would hope, and I guess I always presumed, if the drama club was using the school facility for the school play, they're not charged rental for that space, and they're saying they would get to keep the revenue.
Yeah, I don't know what the threshold is to determine who's paying and who isn't on events like that. I don't know that off the top of my head.
And as Ed had asked, and you already covered, there are expenses related to the actual event days and dates, and they're all probably paid off by the fees that are being charged, it sounds like.
Correct.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Ed.
That's interesting. 2 questions on that, the same show from 2 different people.
And we've never even addressed that in the past. And I learned something, as I usually do when we tape and Ask the Mayor. We're getting into the home stretch of another episode of Ask the Mayor, but Bob, quickly, this one's from Beverly DeMurat. Hi, Mayor. I watch all of the Ask the Mayor episodes and was wondering about one of your recent responses to someone regarding the canal pool being closed and the state's offer to donate the facility to the town of Weymouth. If the pool is the biggest negative and financial drain of this property, would you consider filling the pool and expanding the ice rink facility? Any updates on where we're at with that project?
Very interesting, because I was handed the follow-up question pile from Mary before the show.
Excellent.
And I think that we had 2 questions we didn't answer in the past that we needed to get back to people on, and one of them has to do with Canal. Who was that from?
This one's from Beverly DeMurat.
Oh, that one, but
Beverly Snowman DeMurat.
But the previous one, I don't have that in front of me. It was one of the follow-ups. We got a question before on this too. So yes, the state would like to get out of the business of operating a pool. They have leased long-term to a number of communities their ice rinks. Canal, as we talked about in a previous show, is the only hybrid they have, if you will, that has a pool with a rink. The pool is a loser. The rink is an asset. We would probably be able to increase the availability of ice time, probably generate a little revenue, help out Weymouth Youth Hockey and other organizations that use that if we were to take control of it.
But we don't right now. We don't control that facility as we speak.
No,
okay.
the state. And I know we talked about how that rink came to be in a previous show.
Speaking of card
the
games.
card game thing, but the state is actually putting a lot of money into that as we speak. There's an addition going on with new locker rooms and facilities. They made huge capital improvements in recent years with the HVAC system there. I just toured the building with our facilities people to look at it. It's in pretty good shape. It's probably one of the better conditioned rinks that DCR has. And they're trying to make it more enticing to us because they want to get that pool
do the
off their
handoff,
hands.
yeah.
So we're talking with some organizations right now, I won't name the names, that would partner with us, and they would take responsibility of the pool, and we would take responsibility of the rink and the rest of the facility. So that's a segue to, what's her first name?
Who asked? Oh, Beverly DeMurat.
Beverly's question. The rink has just closed for the season. April 22nd, they're doing some renovations. Normally they were open till the end of April, and they reopen in the fall, October, November. What? You can say it out loud. I'm not.
5 minutes.
Oh. I thought you were trying to answer the question for me. She's telling us there's 5 minutes left in the show.
I picked that up from all the guys holding up five fingers. Hey, that's why he's the boss.
And of course, You can always call for the schedule, and the rink number over there is 335-2000.
There you go.
So, 2090, excuse me, 335-2090.
I'm rubbing off on you, I see.
Right, so there'll be more developments on this as we discuss the future of that facility with the state. We'll see what happens.
That partnership sounds like a decent way to go relative to splitting the baby. Solomon?
Maybe.
Okay, we'll see. All right, well, listen, we're running out of time on another fabulous episode of Ask the Mayor. Once again, we want to remind everybody to send their questions to AskMayorBob@gmail.com. And before we go, as promised, drum roll, please, for the mug, for the glory.
I don't think that you or I should pull this. I think Vanna White should
the fix should be in.
Yeah, we need a neutral party. Come on. Come on.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mary Heinrichs. Dun, 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 dun. Mayor, who do we have?
Oh, boy.
Oh, wow. Wasn't he in not so long ago? Matt Simons is one of our most active citizens, one of the best guys going in South Weymouth fella. And it's good to see he had asked to be entered into the entry. He's my good friend, the Murray's neighbors.
Andrea Honore is going to be very, very jealous.
Matt, this was a legitimate. Mary, you're vouching for this? Do you know Matt at all? All right, so the fix was clearly not in. So listen, we want to remind everybody to keep the questions coming. Perhaps there could be another giveaway in the future. Is that fair to say? Yeah. Keep the questions in. We'll keep the thousands of entrants from the first competition, and we'll move forward by making sure Matt gets this mug. Mayor, any words of wisdom before we say goodbye to everybody?
Can we do another one, too, later? we have one more, I think.
Coming soon, T-shirts, maybe onesies, who knows? But listen, we want to remind everybody to stay tuned for Lost in Space. Danger, Will Robinson.
They're doing a remake.
I saw that. I'm psyched to see it.
It was called Dark, though, not funny. It's not upbeat. It's not.
What about Dr. Smith? Is he back?
The pain, the pain.
Oh, the pain. The pain. Oh, the pain. The pain.
If you have a question, please email the mayor at askmayorbob@gmail.com. That's askmayorbob@gmail.com. Maybe your question will be answered on the next episode of Ask the Mayor.